actually want to really thank ICSA for allowing me to do this. And also, a special note of gratitude is Drs. Xenu and Michael Angioni actually put together a checklist of destructive cult characteristics, which I found very early on when I was doing internet research after coming out of Scientology. You know, trying to figure out what the hell happened to me, and also trying to figure out how do I avoid, the first and most important question I had when I got out of Scientology was, how do I avoid going from one cult to another? From one extreme belief system to another? Because you come out of something like Scientology, especially after 27 years, and really longer. I mean, it was 27 years of being a card-carrying member of Scientology. I went from when I was 15 years old when I first started doing real Scientology classes. But I've been around it since I was 4. I mean, my parents, you know, divorced, got back together, raised me with Scientology. So this was my whole world view. It wasn't just something I stumbled across one day and thought it might help me communicate better or something. I mean, that did happen, but I've had a lot of prepping for it in growing up with it. And the lingo, and you know, there's so much terminology in Scientology. I mean, they literally have 2 dictionaries this thick of terminology. So there's a lot to know about the subject, and there's thousands of lectures from L. Ron Hubbard and all these books, and it's just like, Jesus, all this stuff. Even Scientologists are like, God damn, that's a lot of stuff. So, you know, so I had all that background and then came into it and started doing it, and I was very receptive to Hubbard's ideas and very interested in taking all this in because my parents already had. And they were very much, you know, important people to me. And I lucked out. I found out, even after coming out of Scientology, how much I lucked out with my parents. They're out of Scientology. They actually got out before I did. And they wisely did not go public. They wisely did not put a bunch of crap about it on my plate because they wanted to stay connected with me. This was independently too, because after they got out of Scientology, they got divorced again and got remarried to non-Scientologists. So I have a great relationship with my parents, and I consider myself very lucky to have that. I found out that wasn't necessarily the case in the big wide world. Okay, so anyway, I definitely owe this debt of gratitude to Xenu and to Michael because they set me just that list of characteristics of us versus them thinking. You know, a leader who demands that you follow his dictates and the way he says to do things alone, and that members feel a special sacred truth, or, you know, there's these kind of terms that we throw around, but basically they have the way, they have the truth and the light. And that really helps square my head to, wow, okay, I get it, this is what I belong to. And it was about a year later, in doing all this research and looking into all this, maybe about 2 years actually, before it really dawned on me, just one day. Oh, those characteristics didn't just apply to Scientology. There's all these groups out there that do this, because I started reaching out, you know, I started doing videos and, you know, YouTube stuff, and I wasn't presenting my story, I was presenting a critical analysis of Scientology. I looked around at what was being done. Another key influence being Carl Sagan's book, A Demon Haunted World, right? Science is a candle in the darkness of ignorance. And I thought, this guy is really talking to me. You know, Carl Sagan, who I had only known from Cosmos, billions of stars, right? I didn't know anything about him, but he was an excellent critical thinker. And critical thinking was something I really needed. And, well, you know, something I'll mention some stuff in Scientology, but let's just say right now that the word critical or critical thinking in Scientology is twisted to mean something very different from when I say it to you guys, right? You go critical thinking, yeah, you know, criticism, reason, logic, skepticism. Yeah, no, that's not how Scientology defines critical thinking. It's a very bad thing in Scientology to be critical. Very bad. It comes right back at you. So, let's see here. The talk I'm doing today has to do with coming to grips with your story. So rather than get into a whole lot of background on my Scientology experience, I'll just say that it's been an interesting journey. You know, I came out of Scientology in 2000, the end of 2012, and I came out a true believer. I just stopped working for the group. I still believed in it. I still thought L. Ron Hubbard was the bomb. I still thought that, you know, I knew David Miscavige, the current leader of Scientology, had some issues. Maybe he was beaten up on his staff, maybe he wasn't, I couldn't really tell. But, you know, I thought, well, there's enough wrong with the organization, I don't think I want to work for it anymore. I was 42 years old, my life was half over, and I was like, I'm not really happy. I think I want to, you know, stop working for Scientology. I had been in the Sea Org, which is the highest level of Scientology, for 17 years. And in that whole time, I had not made one step of progress on their bridge to total freedom. That was one of the things I went, well, shit, I'm going to keep working for Scientology for the rest of my life, and if I don't change what I'm doing, I'm never going to get up this bridge, and I'm never going to get the goods. I just keep giving it to other people. How's this supposed to work? So I was like, you know, well, my life's half over, I guess I better reevaluate my decisions. So I left the Sea Org, but I was still a true believer. I kind of forgot how Scientology and the Sea Org specifically, this high-level paramilitary 24/7 operation, treats former members of the Sea Org. You could still be a die-hard Scientologist, but you used to be in the Sea Org and now you're not, so you're kind of scum of the earth. And I started being treated that way, and I was suddenly like, wait a minute, it was okay when I was treating other people that way, but wait a minute, why are you treating me this way? I'm the good guy. Yeah, not so much. So that started opening my eyes to, there's something more going on here. And I'd had enough hints in the last years of it. I had a little bit of internet access, which is very rare. I actually lucked out in a lot of ways. I got to travel around the Western United States. I was by myself a lot. All of these are extremely rare things for somebody in a destructive cult, especially like Scientology, and especially in the Sea Org. So I'd seen some things and put some things together that maybe I wasn't supposed to. And so I knew something was off, and then when I started being treated badly, well, like most people who come out of these destructive cults, it has to become personal before you start waking up to what's actually going on. And that's what caused me to dive down the internet, what I call the internet rabbit hole. And 3 months later, I was not a Scientologist anymore. And that was a hard journey. Because I had to deal with some truths about L. Ron Hubbard, about the organization, about its history, that I had been clueless about. And that alone was a very difficult thing to deal with. Being involved in something for 27 years and finding out you were not just that I was lied to, but I felt, how could I have been so stupid as to have not seen or known about these things and what I was doing was something called hindsight bias, where you learn something and then you're like, well, I should have known this all along. And yeah, no, you can beat yourself up pretty bad about that, and I found that to be true for people coming out of all groups. So I was trying to mention that, it's not good to beat yourself up about this stuff. But critical thinking, which is where I learned about hindsight bias and many other logical fallacies, was the thing that I ran into early on that I have sort of preached about, talked about, suggested or recommended to other people who come out of Scientology or any other destructive cult. Because critical thinking isn't a religion. There's no guru. There's no guy telling you what to think. It's more like, oh, here's how to critically examine information. And that really helped me a lot. Basically got me out of some pretty dark places and showed me how to question and analyze information from a fairly objective point of view. So while that helped me in terms of what not to do, it didn't help me so much in terms of what to do. And there were a couple mechanisms I wanted to go over that are Scientology, maybe not totally Scientology specific, but for me were things I found in Scientology that made my path to, I guess you could call recovery, difficult. There's something in Scientology called no case on post. And the Scientologist smile, right? Yeah, because you have a job, you have a post. That's the thing you're doing, right? In the Sea Org, it's very kind of paramilitary, so that's your post, is what they call it. And when you're on your job, you are not allowed to have misemotion, any negative emotions, right? Grief, apathy, fear, anger, these are misemotions. Hubbard made a whole scale of emotion, and he put numbers, and it's all arbitrary, but he put numbers with every emotion, and below 2 on the tone scale is misemotion, and you're not supposed to do that. So, and in a short term, that makes sense. I mean, who wants to go to McDonald's and order a burger and the person's crying because their mother just died? I mean, you want the person to go deal with that, right? That's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But you try to apply this idea of no case on post. In other words, I can't show any real emotion when I'm feeling bad for years. And when I'm in the Sea Org, 17 years, it's 24/7. So there's no case on post ever. Your life becomes no case on post. It took me 2 years before it started to dawn on me, coming after I came out of the Sea Org and out of Scientology, that maybe I might possibly have a problem expressing my emotions. Maybe. I had lost my fiancée. When I left Scientology and I started speaking out publicly about it, I lost everybody. I didn't lose my mom and dad, thank God, but I lost my fiancée, her whole family, friends I had for 20 years, overnight, gone. That's how fast disconnection happens in Scientology. There are Facebook police who monitor your Facebook feed, and if you're in bad with the church, they make it their business to go tell all your friends, he's bad with the church, you need to disconnect from him. So it happens really fast. So I was experiencing a great loss. I mean, I'd asked this woman to marry me, we were talking about kids, I mean, we were all in. Then suddenly we weren't, just like that. And you always think, when you see this happen in the church, well, they did bad things. They deserve what they get. You can always rationalize this crap until it happens to you, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, this is real. This really happens. And it really happens that fast. Suddenly you have no one in your life. And so I was, kind of starting from square zero. Well, like I said, it took me about 1.5 years before I could start to really process the grief of losing somebody that I loved more than myself. So that's why I said it. After 1.5 years, I was kind of like, I think something's wrong, but I can't feel what people talk about, with this griefy loss stuff. And that's when it started dawning on me that this case on post thing had caused me to suppress my emotions for so long that I kind of forgot what they felt like. That was a little rough to come back from. Another thing that is kind of important in Scientology is, and we talked about this briefly in the panel this morning, was this concept of always being responsible for your own condition. Now, this is a beautiful mechanism for a cult leader. If you have a problem of any kind, it's your fault. It's not my fault. It's not the organization's fault. L. Ron Hubbard can do no wrong. All of his words are perfect. To the point where if you think you have a problem with something L. Ron Hubbard said, it's simply because you don't understand what he said. And you're going to spend hours in dictionaries and encyclopedias trying to figure out what really is word salad and nonsense for most of what he had to write, and he wrote a lot. So you could spend a lot of your life in Scientology trying to just figure this stuff out and go through all these mental gymnastics trying to make sense of things that I look at now and I go, I am impressed I ever thought that made sense. I mean, really kind of nutty stuff, especially when you get in a deep dive into some of the really deep philosophy of Scientology, right? So this responsible for own condition thing makes everything in your life, no matter what happens to you, your fault. It's always on me. And that was another thing. It took quite a while to even come to a recognition of how deep that could go into your personality after decades of thinking that. And not just me thinking it, but having my seniors and my senior's senior and every other fellow Scientologist run that on you. It becomes a peer pressure kind of thing, where everybody is telling you, oh, well, you just, oh, you had a car accident, you got hit by something, well, what did you do to pull that in? That's the question. Every time, what did you do to pull that in? You're like, and you have to invent some answer. All right. And finally, and one of the other, and there's so many of these things, I'm so summarizing stuff. No victims, right? Now there's the responsibility thing, but also Hubbard went way out of his way to make it very clear to Scientologists that being a victim is very bad. How dare you think you're a victim, right? That just means, again, that you have done things that were moral transgressions. They don't use the word sin in Scientology. They use the word overt, or an overt act, something you do that is conscious survival in some fashion. Basically a sin. And the sins you've committed, that's why you feel like you're a victim, not because somebody actually victimized you. Again, it took me a couple of years to get around to the idea that I was victimized. There were so many rationalizations to that. Again, I'm being very quick about this because time is limited. But what I wanted to get to here today, in terms of the main point of this, was after 4 or 5 years now of working on this, I realized when I first got out, I thought, you hear the term recovery, or getting back to normal, or reacclimating into society from this very closed, insular group. And I thought, I'll give myself a year, I'll be fine. Well, after a year, I had learned enough to go, I think I'm going to have to give myself another year. Well, after 2 years, it dawned on me that the idea of recovery is basically something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life to one degree or another, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is completely fine. When you can acknowledge that there's work to do, that maybe I don't know everything there is to know, that maybe there was some victimization, and also that maybe I'm not responsible for every single thing that ever happened to me, you're able to give yourself some space and give yourself some credit, and you go, okay, maybe I'm not so bad, and maybe the world isn't so bad either, because maybe if I'm in this place, maybe everybody else is too. That's a new idea, And you start shedding all these victim-y, blamey, weird ideas that Scientology instills in you, and it's hard work after a couple decades of that stuff. But these words, normal and recovery, these are important words. And I think they have kind of, different ideas or connotations for different people. And I started, they can be kind of triggering in themselves, because they bring up issues of feeling dependent or wrong or damaged or somehow less than okay. Oh, I'm in recovery. Yeah, well, so something wrong with you then, right? Not really, but there can be these connotations with this. And also, of course, the idea that you are different from everybody else. Well, you are, but if you think about it, everybody's different from everybody else. So, why feel so special about it, right? So, coming to terms with what all this means, and kind of defining or redefining normal for yourself, and maybe realizing that, for me, the idea of recovery is or normal is not, I had this idea, and it's from Scientology, that maybe there were these states of existence. Hubbard presents this thing called a bridge to total freedom, where you have all these steps that you're supposed to do, and every step that you do is supposed to bring you to a higher state of awareness and ability. And I was thinking for the first couple of years that maybe normal was one of those states, you know, and I was going to get to it at some point. I was going to achieve normal. Well, come to think about that quite a bit, read a lot of psychology stuff, talked to a lot of people, done a lot of interviews with cult recovery experts and therapists and counselors, and you know, you watch a lot of stuff. And I started kind of looking at this, and I thought, maybe, you know, what's the most constructive thing I can say here? I think that normal and recovery or recovered are not states of being you achieve that are like, I am normal. You know, I don't think that's a thing. I think instead, maybe for me at least, it's coming to a place where maybe you don't feel so traumatized by what happened in the past. Maybe the past is okay, it happened, you can't undo it, so what are you going to do about it, you know? You kind of have to deal with it. Maybe a place where you have some rules and some guidelines for yourself. And I really want to stress for yourself, because we're all different. We all come from different places, we all have different experiences. Even in Scientology, some of us have had vastly different experiences. So maybe my rules or my guidelines or the things that make sense to me are different. So I'm not going to sit here and elucidate a bunch of rules. I'm just going to say, I think maybe for each of us, maybe it might be a good idea to have some. You know, whatever makes sense for us. That brings us to a place where we're in charge of ourselves. And we know it. And I think that's the most important part. Because the whole destructive cult experience is giving yourself over to somebody else's ideas, trying to remold yourself into their image, according to what Steve Hassan has written. So maybe instead of that, you're making yourself what you want to be, whatever that is. And knowing that no matter what's going to come your way, you know, life is, what do they say? Life's what happens when you're making other plans. So life's always going to throw stuff at you, right? Always certainly does to me. So instead of trying to be in this rigid place where everything's fine and everything's good, and I better not move, otherwise it won't be fine and good anymore. Instead, bring it, whatever it is, and I've got rules and guidelines and ideas and things I can do that I can deal with whatever's coming my way, and I don't have to fall back to having to listen to somebody else tell me how to live or react or respond. I think that is a pretty good place to get to. And however it happens, you know, I'm being really loosey-goosey about this because I know that there are a lot of paths for everybody coming out of this stuff. So, you know, that's kind of what I wanted to sort of put there, is that's where I'm trying to go, and after 5 years, I think I can sort of see that path for myself, and I hope other people can too, who come out of these groups, and I think that however we get there is completely legitimate, and that's